Last year turned out being a record year for startup companies. Magnet's annual State of MENA funding report, which looks at specific investments in this region, highlighted substantial investment made during 2017. I asked Philip Bahoshy, the CEO and founder of Magnet, about the key findings of the new study.
It was a very positive report which looked to overview the startup transactions and the activity that took place last year. For me, the three key findings that are interesting is that 260 disclosed transactions is a record. We haven't had that many transactions here in the region, and it shows that there's growth and maturity in the ecosystem. In terms of the absolute value of total amount of funding, that's gone down year on year, but when you strip out the huge success stories of Souk and Kareem, especially because Souk was acquired last year, you have a 65% increase in the amount of funding of the underlying startups, and that's extremely positive. And the third one is that you're continuing to see the dominance of e-commerce and fintech as the two leading industries for which many of the startups are being funded.
How would you describe the success and failure rate of startups?
To a certain extent, it's still early to be able to gauge that. It's difficult to track. We try to track some of those figures, but we're still trying to get to that granularity. It's very hard to understand when a company's actually failed and when a company's a success. But I think that we're beginning to see more and more success stories. More companies go from early stage funding to later stage funding, and we're beginning to see growth in the number of exits, which is the ultimate success for a startup, being acquired, being taken over by a larger entity or moving outside of the region. But I think failure is part of the cycle, and there's inevitably going to be continued cycle. I think the figure is around 90% of startups in general globally fail. And being able to embrace that, understand why, and try and encourage and educate entrepreneurs on how to mitigate that is part of the exercise.
Is enough progress being made in e-commerce and fintech in business at the moment, do you think?
I think those two of the hottest industries for the time being. E-commerce, in my opinion, is masked as a logistics company that provide choice to consumers here in the region. And the reason that they're successful is because ultimately that's a major pain point here in the region. Being able to get products to consumers is a major pain point, so you continue to see this growth. Having said that, with the dominance of your souks and your noons and the larger players coming to the market, we're beginning to see consolidation take place. So that is something that's beginning to evolve, and I think is a trend that will continue in 2018. In terms of fintech, that's a very hot industry. Investors are very keen to get into that space because it's a scalable product.
Now, Philip, what's your forecast for the business environment in 2018?
When you look at the startup space, if you speak to anybody 4 or 5 years ago, they'll say that there weren't many VCs, there weren't many angel investors, there weren't many entrepreneurs, and there weren't many institutions like accelerator programs, incubators, or even government initiatives. Currently, you're seeing a lot more. You're seeing many existing VCs come and deploy second funds. You have many new entrants. Saudi Arabia, for instance, is having a big focus on entrepreneurship, as well as all regional governments. The UAE has a very strong initiative with Expo 2020 and the new Area 2071 that exists. So I think you have many of those pieces of the jigsaw coming together, as well as many new entrepreneurs come into this space. So if you look at the pyramid, the bottom of the base continues to grow. And ultimately, the more success stories you have, the more funding they require, the more we're likely to see funding flow into the region. So we have a very positive outlook for 2018, which is a continuation of some of the success that took place in 2017.